Excellent.
All right. Hey, everybody. It's the 21st of March. Is it the first day of spring, depending on what continent you're on?
If you're wearing white.
I'm still wearing a hat, but we made it. Hey, everybody. This is Gimbalabs Playground. We meet every Tuesday at 1800 UTC to talk projects, big ideas, small ideas. Sometimes we hear from developers who are already building something and want to get some feedback on it. Other times we talk about strategy and structures, more like I think what Harry's got for us today. But it's just a good chance to get together in a mixed group, not necessarily to focus on development, but often it's nice to dip our toes into that a little bit. So usually we start just by having a chance to say hi. And Philip, old friend from, when was the last time you were at Playground? 2021?
No, come on, no. I should come more often, and sometimes I lurk on YouTube. But yes, and there's been definitely a few months. But great, thank you for having me back. It's a wonderful space as usual.
It's good to see you, man. So what have you got for us? You said you had a quick story to tell us.
Yes, thank you for giving me the chance. Basically, guys, I opened recently a new Discord server. I'm sure you don't have enough of them, so you need another one. And basically, the idea is to have a place where Cardano professionals can gather and maybe get gigs or jobs, and just get to that place where we can, with our knowledge, diverse knowledge, technical and non-technical knowledge, where we can get to a place that we are professionals, that we do this for a living, right? I struggled with that for some time. James was, as I always say, one of the early key components to give me the confidence to make that step forward. And maybe we all need some sort of a James to be that. I see a lot of people that are putting in a lot of effort, you guys included here, the whole Discord server of Gimbalabs, different servers, Telegram groups, Twitter accounts, Swarm, people coming to town halls regularly after town halls, doing volunteering, being moderators, community managers, social, whatever, right? A lot of people are very passionate in this space, but unfortunately, a lot of them do not get paid or get paid, insignificant amounts that they can support themselves with, right? And also, on the other hand, as soon as I had this idea, I kind of put a small tweet out there, and 2 recruiting agencies kind of responded and say, hey, this is like, yeah, I mean, you know the Cardano community. We have no idea who these people are. Yeah, sure. Let's do it. And I made a decision. I made a not to monetize people coming in and looking for work. Like, there's no payment to join the server. There's no premium membership in the server for people who are looking for work, right? I'm gonna share a screen, James, just for 2 minutes. These are the links. If you guys want to join, I'm gonna just share a link quickly to show you the server. Just a very, very short thing. I think you can see my Discord now, right?
Yep, got it.
Okay, great. So it's very simple. We only have 25 members. Currently, you're seeing my admin dashboard. Basically, we have rules and guidelines. You need to read them. You need to accept. This is like the first check. You have to click on these buttons to see the remainder of the server, right? It's also to stop bots and things like that. And then we can select a role here. I have some simple bot that says, okay, well, I'm a founder, I'm a consultant, I'm hiring, I'm looking for work, and this is some of my expertise. As you can see, there is a backend developer, front-end developer, blockchain developer, and there should be a developer other areas, like kind of a catch-all. So I think this is a bit relevant to Gimbalabs. But as you can see, there are other, roles as well. Then there is a channel here, present yourself. where you can, if you want, you can upload your CV. You can have one post that is about you, so that anyone who comes to the server can look for that post in this channel and see who you are. And if they like your interactions in this Discord, they can say, okay, well, this makes much more sense to me than a CV. If someone shares value, concrete things, smart things in the server, they obviously can add value down the line to a company. And Discord in that way remembers all. And if you go to search and you say from Philip, from me, you can see all my posts here, right? And you can see, okay, well, he didn't say something stupid, or he did say something stupid. And, a potential recruiter, in my opinion, has a much better input into someone's train of thought and capabilities looking through those messages. Of course, it relies on people actually being active and posting these messages. And that's why we have these channels for specific areas. Biz devs, finance, marketing, social media, HR, etc. Right? So, you guys coming from Gimbalabs can be, you can have great discussions in devs blockchain, or in backend, or in front end. And, I made a few corny jokes here in these descriptions. So you can say, look, I'm in front end. Well, I like React. Well, I like Next.js, or I hate JavaScript, or, whatever. But it can be a way for you to show your professional knowledge. And it can be a way for other people who are hiring to get this value right there and then, right? And it doesn't have to be a full blast job and end of the world. It can be a gig. It can be something small. There are designers. I was struggling to find someone to do a logo, and I'm still not happy with the logo. So that's that's on me. But yeah, that was kind of the idea of this server. Thank you, James, for giving me the time. Not going to take up any more time. But yeah, if you're interested, please join. You know where to find me. If you want anything from me, for sure I'm here.
Philip, thank you. And thanks for the short presentation, short and informative. I like the style. If anybody has any questions, let's drop them in the chat for Philip for now, because I want to make sure that Harry gets full airtime. But this is an exciting conversation, and I'll try to be active on there, and we'll see where it goes. All right. So usually at Playground, we have a chance just to check in or hear a short presentation like that. But the main event starts usually at 1:15, where we have our weekly presenter. I'm going to share my screen for just a moment for anybody who hasn't seen this before, or for anybody who's thinking about starting to get more involved. There it is. We use Miro for scheduling Playground. I'll drop this link into the chat. This is an open Miro board that anybody can access. And if I zoom way out, you'll see that in the top left-hand corner right here, there's a calendar of upcoming Playground events. Today is the 21st of March, and we have Harry presenting on bringing Cardano to Cambridge. Next 2 weeks, we'll hear from the Swarm, and you can see the list of who's up next after that. We are scheduled out into May. But if you have anything you want to present on, whether it's a high-level idea that you're just starting to write the details for, or something you've been working on already, all you have to do, there's no permission necessary. Just come to this Miro board, drop your name and contact information and the title of what you want to present, and that's it. You're officially on the agenda. So that's the story. Anybody have high-level questions about Playground? Okay. So I'm excited to have my old friend Harry back. Harry, when was the last? When did we first start talking? First of all, what fund would you estimate?
Do you know what? It was a year ago. It was over a year ago, because the dodgy character of Jonathan Adji introduced us into Cardano in sort of November 21. That would have been. So we spoke after that. And then we met at Lausanne, didn't we? And then the time's just gone. And this is one of those things. The time flies all the time. And then I think, like you were saying, the guys were saying earlier, when you've got a day job as well, then it just all gets very scrunchy. So yeah, but it's been a long time. And you're still down, although you'll get embarrassed by it, you're still down with Norrie and Felix and Jonathan and Yoram and Mercy as the sort of original people I spoke to. Yeah, and then we got involved in Catalyst because of that, which has been amazing. And it's a real pleasure to come and talk to you guys tonight. Yeah, so
Thanks,
I
Harry.
really appreciate it. Now, unfortunately, I can't airdrop the tea cakes, yeah, because you guys are going to be working for your supper tonight. But I can't airdrop it.
We got somebody here who can mint you some tea cakes if we need to. We'll see if it comes to that.
Yeah, and as I said, and thanks again to Sebastian, because Seb was very helpful in talking me through what to do for this particular project, and then he suggested very kindly that to come along and see you guys. So that's it really. It's not a particularly long presentation, but I'd like some advice. And I've got a Miro board. I dropped the link in just a while ago. I can drop it in again, or I can share the screen as well if that's easier. But I was thinking that we'd get some stickies out if that's okay for you guys in a little bit. So I'll see if I can drop this. No, that's not it. All right, okay. Let me try and I put it in up there, didn't I? Here we go. All right. Okay, let me copy that. So if any of you are in there, there is a Miro board link, and I'm doing it again.
Yep, looks good.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, why don't you go ahead and share screen there so we can follow you
Yeah,
around.
then that's on the
If I
video,
have-
isn't it, as well? And the only thing I get worried about there is that it sort of it irritates people. Right. Okay. So I'll do the share screen thing. We're on Zoom, so I can just about handle that. So, right. And we're going to share the big screen. Okay. So can you see this one, guys?
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah. And if that's too, we'll zoom in and out a bit. As I think I might have said before, I've been taking lessons from Tevo regarding Miro board mastery. So I do zoom in and out about 300 beats a minute, which can be quite irritating for some people. So, so what it's about, we were very lucky. We put in a proposition to do the F9 students, scouting for students, which has a particular connotation for some guys there with English for Scouting for Girls, which is a band and a book by the Scouty bloke. So that always makes me laugh. This bit then, what we've got, our sort of, where do we come from? So with Edify, where we come from, education is a basic human right. That's the sort of core thing. Education is a basic human right, and it should be available to everybody. And people should be allowed to and enabled and facilitated to be educated to the level of their potential, because that's how we grow assets. Yeah, and a lot of the stuff we do is all about growing asset and understanding asset. So that's where we come from as a core. And the bit where we sit in that with Edify and with my personal understanding is it's about building an education platform for, and you're going to have to think of a better word for this for me because I'm not good with the words, but it's a platform for elite developers, yeah, elite devs, ultra devs. Now, what does that mean? That means when we've got that innovation curve, and we've got 2.5% of innovators, 12.5% of early adopters, and a gap, and then an early majority, late majority. That's where I've spent my career working in innovation. And I see it these days as a, like if we've got the planet, that's the 90-odd%, where most people live and they're happy. So most people live on a planet, they're all very happy there. They do innovation, but it tends to be adaptive innovation. And then you've got the guys who are the innovators in particular, and they've got on a spaceship and they've shot off from the planet. And that means to do that role, you have to have a particular type of personality, which is not normal. So the first bit of innovators they've then gone to the moon. And that's the tech, that's the high tech sector and innovation in different areas. And I think as I've got down here, if I zoom in, look, who are these elite devs? What do they get up to? Well, I think Philip was saying it just before. It's that spectrum of developers. It's tech devs, org devs, strategy devs, business devs, finance devs, ops devs. And they tend to fall into, you're going to be in the private sector where it's for profit, or you're going to be in a third sector or public sector where it's not necessarily for profit, but might be for retained revenue. So anyway, these are the guys that are on the spaceship, and the first level of them have gone bindling off, and they've gone to the moon and dropped some people off. And then some of them carry on. So the 2.5% of the 2.5%, so the innovators of the innovators, they carry on zipping off, and they've gone to Mars. And that's where we get into stuff like blockchain. And then you've got these guys that are 2.5% of the 2.5% of the 2.5%, who really get into decentralization, and they get into what the world can be like with that, and they get into things like AI. So all these disruptive engines that are going on. Now, that's where I see us. That's where I see the guys in Catalyst. They're in the 2.5% of a 2.5% of a 2.5%. It doesn't matter what you get up to. That's the gig. So the platform to build then, there's millions of people like that across the globe, but they live maybe in Sao Paulo, or they live in Ghana. And so they don't have access to the brilliance, to what's going to unleash their brilliance. So that's really the first part of why bother is, yeah, okay, at the end of the day, it's about unleashing the brilliance of people so they can appreciate that brilliance, yeah, become aware of it, appreciate it, and then grow it. So grow their potential, fulfill their potential, and then realize the value. Because again, the other bit we always talk about in there is about value. And that's what these little coggy diagram is. The coggy diagram is just a simple one that says most people, the lenses are commercial and cultural, and then so that's their columns. The rows then are today and transactions, and tomorrow and investment and relationships. So basically, most people spend most of their time worrying about what they do today to make money. So that's about income today. Smarter people get into understanding how to build assets by spinning out some profit or some retained income. And they then build things that make it easier to produce stuff tomorrow. So they invest in machinery and all that sort of stuff, and land and labor. Again, the issue these days is that in that commercial lens is just 20% of the value of an organization. 80% sits in the other side, which is this other lens of cultural. And that's about today, that's about capability. So training, skills, experience, expertise, HR, employee engagement. It's all the things that help people do their job better today. The most important bit, though, is spinning up into people assets for tomorrow. And that's this business about leadership, communications, culture, knowledge management, talent management, succession planning. That's what that's about. And then in the middle was the bit around purpose, which is you have a commercial and a cultural purpose. And then you have business strategy, you have product, you have positioning, and you have channels and ecosystem. That's how we look at everything. But the main thing, it's about helping to build assets and value assets. And that approach is what we're taking into this educational platform. It works in your space. So for instance, when you're developing, how much of your value, and again, this was Philip's conversation from before, how much of your value is actually captured in what you do? So when you write some code, when you write an app, how much do you get paid for that app? This is one of the questions. How much do you get paid? If you own the app, all of it, then you're cool. But like you said, if you've done a deal with a VC or a funder and they own a part of your business, or if you work for a business, you get paid a salary. But say that app is Uber, it's the Uber app, and it sells billions of pounds. You don't get any of that share of that billions of pounds. So this is one of the areas for the sort of work that we work in, where it is the 2.5% of the 2.5% of the 2.5%, how do you value that brilliance over time? Now you can, but it's not what people do mainly today. So that's the sort of background. What do we get up when we do stuff? What do we get up to? Really, we run an impact innovation toolkit. The first bit is having a measure of value, which includes both the commercial today, commercial tomorrow, the investment, and then cultural today and cultural tomorrow. So it's a full value way of auditing the operations of a business or another organization. And then what else do we do? Then once we've done that, then we spin that out so that we start to look at what goes on inside an organization, so effectiveness, but also how it sits in its market and how that sits in the business environment and the big environment. So that's our educational platform. That's what we do. And in Catalyst, we've adapted it all. We were lucky to be funded in F7, which James was talking about, and F8 and F9 to put this stuff into place. Because the issue is, and this is how it starts to tie to Cambridge and also Africa and places like that. The issue is that 60% of, you probably know, 60% of businesses die within 2 years. 85% of businesses die within 5 years. Why do they do that? It's not because their product is bad. It's not because their market's bad. It's not because their channels are bad, generally. It's because in that little pentangle in the middle, there is not enough leadership. There's not enough communications, not a strong enough culture. It's the people stuff that usually kills off brilliant ideas. Now, you guys may have been in that situation before, but that's what it's about. And yet in our VC-driven world, where VC means venture capital, so again, venture means you go on an adventure and 10 of you go to India and find the spices and come back, and only 1 or 2 of you will actually return. But I'm the investor, so I'll pay you for the ones who come back with the spices. So that's the adventure bit, that's the venture. And then capital means somebody owns all the money. They will give you the money, but they want all the profit from your returns afterwards. So that's venture capital. It's a very restrictive model of doing business. So this is the platform stuff. So wouldn't it be nice if we had an educational platform that sat in the space where it looked at the value of all of the elements in the system and the complexity of the systems, and you could throw it into the future so that you could understand the full value as an impact level, commercial and cultural, of what's going on. So that's what we get up to. Yeah, and we've been running some programs that have gone very well in an incubator and accelerator space. We've done 3 for SBOs, and we've done 1, I think, or 2 for the accelerators. And then we're doing a further one that's much more about building community hubs. So look, what else do we do with it? So the first thing you do is you build a way to measure your progress, internal, external. The next thing you need to understand is your journey. So the last part then really, and this is where you guys are as well, when we work with anybody from students through to colleges, then you start off, where are you now? Where do you want to go? How are you going to get there? And what's the way of the journey? So what's the leadership? Now, I'll leave this board up. It's got all of our IP on it on the next bit, but I'll leave it up and you can have a look around it if you fancy it. But this is the growth journey. So basically you plan your journey and then you implement, and that's as big as I can go. Then you implement the audit. So you audit, you put a playbook in place, you deliver, you audit, you put a playbook in place and you deliver. And that's the models we do. So the idea then for the Cambridge one was, if we're trying to get this set of IP and the set of models and all the models you've got and all that brilliance, if we're trying to get that into Africa and places like that, and we're trying to get it to these ultra devs, whatever blend they are, then how do you do it? Well, one way of doing it is the projects we talked about. So we're working with WADA and we're building a valuation model for non-commercial. So we already run a big valuation model that we use with big firms, but we're running a valuation model for people who don't create profit. So WADA is a social impact organization. So it may make some profit in one bit, and other bits it doesn't. Well, how do you measure the value of Jonty then? Yeah, so when he's doing an entrepreneurial dev bit, how do you measure his value or the other guys? So that's that bit. Now for us then, we like to do things in parallel, and it's often contrarian. So for me, the best way of building the education platform model for places like Africa or South America or wherever, or the Bronx, yeah, or parts of London, how to build that model, you go to where that model's working really well already. Now, Cambridge, as I've lived outside Cambridge now for about 15 years or so, Cambridge is a massive incubator, and it's got some of this model really badly wrong, but some of it's really, really good. So the idea then is, if you're going to take Cardano anywhere to find where this stuff is operating at its best, in the UK, you've got Oxbridge and Imperial. Those are the three parts of the cheese that I used to get told about when I was helping design this stuff. So Cambridge then is an amazing innovation hub. So the idea here is, if we can take Cardano to Cambridge and blockchain and AI or whatever it is, and if we can help build that flavor, so it's put in a decentralized, it's put in a catalyst type innovation hub framework, the mix of those guys will be very powerful. So for me, when I did the project, it wasn't around, let's go and talk to some students and just get them a bit more aware of what Catalyst is or Cardano is, so they might think about it. These guys are spinning a massive hub anyway. So the idea then is, well, what can we learn about it that we can take to Africa and miss out some of the stages? And then also, what can we do with it to help build the connections between these types of hubs like Cambridge, wherever they are, and Catalyst and Cardano. So that's the sort of big picture stuff. Yeah. And then it's like, oh bugger, what do we do to do it then? So this is our program. So whether we're running this as an incubator, an accelerator, a scale up, or a steady state for profits or non-profits, we run through the same series. So as I was saying before, we start off in the middle, and middle bit is internal. And that's all about the audit of the businesses or the organization as an organization. And that's about effectiveness. The outer two rings then, the black one and the magenta one, they're about how do you live in your market commercially and culturally, and how do you treat your enterprise as a product. And those are all the modules. So that's the education platform content. As I say, we're sort of looking to build an education platform sausage machine, which we've already got, to put the content through. And that's a conversation we'll have again with you guys at another time, because this is some content. You've got lots of brilliant content. It's all project-based learning. So let's have a look at doing some of that. So that's where Cambridge comes in. So what's going on? So this bit, if you can see it, this is just, so what's Harry going to do to go and build a community in Cambridge? Not just a funnel that sucks in graduates who might, or PhDs who might be interested in Catalyst and might be different types of devs. It's more about how can we build a long-term structure that can be replicated. And I know that this has been done brilliantly in other places. Simon Salstrom was extremely helpful talking to me about his Oxford experience. And I know you guys do a lot of this stuff as well. obviously Seb's in this space, and James is. So for me then, what's it about? Well, to build a long-term value add thing, it needs to run in parallel, and it needs to have the usual stages of building a community. So again, in here, look, first thing, as I split out, and this is now all open for comment really, but as I said, the idea is there's a lot of devs out there. The guys in Cambridge are stupidly busy. They run 8-week terms. They run projects all the time. Their expectations on them are very big. They tend to fall into then they will go and work in an organization, which might, like we say, be non-profit or impact, or they'll go and work in an enterprise of some type. And again, they have, and this is the expertise from you guys, but they obviously have drivers about what type of institution to go and work in or organization afterwards. So how do we get hold of them? If we're going to go and run a program for them to get them involved in Catalyst, the first thing is then you understand where they are. So the market, the users for this are students who are in communities, societies and departments, or academics in departments. The first task is to identify these guys. So talk to the colleges and contact the partners, which I've been doing. The next stage then is to understand that, well, let's do that one first. To understand the clients who pay for this project are Catalyst. So it's either impact funders, Emergo, Catalyst, technical Catalyst business. They're the clients. They're different to the users. So who can we work with as partners? Other businesses, impact funders, professional services people like banks, and angel investors. Now, this is the side that I work with closely. These sides I know because I coach profs at Cambridge. Well, not so much now. I tend to just work with Imperial. Yeah. And these guys are you lot. So first thing then is to talk to the colleges and just identify what the mix could be. For me, when we build these programs, what we do, we build a community where we bring that lot together. So it's not just about the students talking to students, because that's lovely, but it's given the real world depth and the real world connections by talking to the people who are going to help them with their businesses and their organizations, and the people who are going to help them with blockchain and help them understand what decentralized and all those other lovely disruptive technologies are all about. Next level then, after we've done that, is to notify some events out and contact partners and contact the students. And that we're sort of getting to that stage now. I've held off because of Fund 9. Fund 9 caused no end of grief because it meant we had to go and find different work because the projects we'd put in for just got trashed, which is a bit irritating. So the engagement then is to run events. Now the plan there is to start off and do some intro sessions, maybe run some workshops. And I'm happy to do a mini accelerator, which is a mini version of that thing that I showed you before. Because again, what I found is over the years is that very few people really understand running a business isn't that hard, but you need to focus on it. And you strip away all the rubbish and just focus on the core things, the purpose, and then the things that sit around market, product, customers, and channels. So that was what I was thinking. I'd do like a mini accelerator for these guys. And then in there, my next thing was, if we're running it as a project, this is supposed to sort of like be 5 or 6 months, and it will be 10 months because of the F9 stuff going on. And I'm just about finished now, but in that bit, what else can we put into the mix? What else works where you guys get some value out of it? Where we're engaging these potential users, potential members in a way that benefits you as well. And then part of that for me was, yeah, I'd like it to be the way these guys run. And I don't know what it's like with the other unis, but again, they're computer scientists, they're in engineering, and they were in a business school. And they will be involved in summer projects. There will be an opportunity to engage these guys at that space. So that was my thinking. And I know, again, the brilliance for me was some of the programs you do with Gimbalabs that Seb was talking about, and also Lucas stuff that was running about, Cardano for non-technical people. For me, that's really important, because what I'd like to do, just to wrap up, what I'd like to do is to build this little generator so that it's building in these guys as well. Because Cambridge is a bit up its own bum, yeah? They're just a little bit up their own botties. But they're some of the brightest people in the world. And their name is always used, just like Harvard or Oxford or MIT or whatever. Their names are always used by other people. So you can understand why they're a bit standoffish. But actually, when you get involved with them, and if they see your value, if you put the shoe leather in, if you do the work, they're incredibly supportive. So that was about it in terms of what's going on. Now we got some fun. Oh, I've managed to move it. Someone has. Probably me. So anyway, look, there's a couple of little bits around. First, some questions from you guys, and then there's some bits in there. What would really help is to understand from your perspective what will help Gimbalabs and Catalyst with this approach. And then also, if you were now a dev and you were now a scientist and you were coming out of a big university, what's the product and market all about? Yeah. So again, are you bored now with blockchain and you go straight to AI? What's, you know, you need your 100 grand or whatever. What are you going to get up to? So those are my questions. But first of all, there's sort of questions from you guys. So thank you very much for listening. I can see there's at least 3 people left, which includes Jonathan and Seb. So I think that's a result. So shall I stop sharing now? So thoughts, reactions, is that idiotic? Explanations, whatever.
Alex got a hand up.
Oh, you don't expect me to understand the technology, Alex. Yeah, you need to just come off mute and talk.
I'm a philosopher.
Oh, you're a bit muffly.
Say what?
You're a bit muffly.
And how about now?
A bit better.
So, yeah, this one part of this conversation ties nicely to what we were talking about today in developer experience working group, and that is like to measure success by measuring time. It takes a developer to become Cardano developer. Yeah, so like we have some data on how long it takes for a guy to come to Gimbalabs and to.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So like how long it takes for a student who knows computer science to come to Gimbalabs and be able to, let's say, like formulate a product as you described. And that's one interesting bit. And it's like just general area of conversation. And the second one is you asked about the market for things and what's going on. And my personal perspective, like maybe editorial is not on board with this, but personally, I like that you make a point to focus students on the end goal, but actually what is in the market is what is really a valuable resource is a person with ability to concentrate on doing something without having a goal in mind. Because when you have a user test ready, that's about technology. But anyway, like when you have it up and you know how it works, and actually like it's sprinting and people are quite motivated and they do things and they know how to do things and ideas get born and conversations don't die out. But the problem is the ideas are very rare. And right now, like a couple of hours ago, we had this discussion that we had an initiative like this, and first the ideas were just pumping out, but then, well, without having like coherent picture, it's very difficult to concentrate. And that's one of the things that actually not really any students, so far as I know, have. At least one of my personal heroes and the professor from MIT complains about this in his video lectures on YouTube. So it's like, that's a very valuable thing to have, and that, like, education doesn't give you this. Or at least maybe not to everyone.
Okay, that's brilliant. So what I heard was that there's some value in talking about value against time, and the value of an end goal. And then I couldn't hear all the other bit, but then that the ideas are getting rare. Is that correct? That's what I heard. So anyone else?
There's more money than the ideas. Ideas are like,
yeah.
Well, find something useful to build first and try it. And that's very difficult because I've been here around for a year also. And I've had one valuable idea in a year and like a bunch of which are trash.
That's brilliant. Thank you. What else we got? Come on, there's loads of brilliance out there. The tea cake token drop has now happened.
Hey Harry, I caught up with Simon at the meetup in London at the weekend. We got talking to him for the first time face to face, and he's doing lots of good stuff with Oxford students, but also a lot of remote teams. So there's a big crossover between every community you build up around students. Probably not even eventually now, but sooner rather than later becomes a remote worker. So there's a whole sort of preparedness for remote working that has happened with COVID that now lends itself to this sort of plan and service far greater than before. So I was talking to Simon about that sort of thing, and I do plan to catch up with him again. We were trying to get a call together to see just what sort of, maybe we can get some students of his working in Fluid 7, which is a web agency. That sort of, even if it's as an apprenticeship, kick things off, get started, internship type scenario, that brings, real world paid portfolio type projects and jobs to recent graduates or remote workers in developing nations, which I think is really valuable. So that aspect of yours of capturing the value, I think that's probably the challenge, is how do you capture, and probably the thing that's most interesting to people here is how do you capture value in a remote work situation that then becomes something you can put on a balance sheet and take to investors or clients or whoever's the next stage in growth. Yeah, I liked what you said about VCs in particular.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable.
That's brilliant, because so as you'll know, Oxford and Cambridge are residential universities, so the students are not allowed to be remote. They must live in a hall for those first 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is. And I think you're right. I'm sure that causes them grief, because they go out into the world where most of the universities now and colleges and everyone else is remote, aren't they? Most working's remote, at least 3 days. And Cambridge is a massive science cluster. And the guys that I know that run businesses there, they have problems because they're trying to get people back in a lab 3 days a week. And yet for these guys' mental health, they need to be in a lab a couple of days a week because they go bonkers otherwise. So it's an interesting one. I really love the bit about let's be like Rupert Murdoch and use students as interns for nothing. I think that's a brilliant idea, and I wish I'd thought of that one actually. Yeah. So, but it's fun. It is funny though, because part of it was what Philip was talking about at the stage, and I've had conversations with search, some search people, what they call them, not headhunters, the other ones. Anyway, posh headhunters. Yeah, headhunters and recruiters, because this does seem to be a massive area where it hasn't. I know there are very good recruiters out there who recruit into these areas like data, because we've got clients who are big data recruiters, actually, big data recruiters and big data science groups. So I know that this stuff happens, but it still seems to have lots of gaps in, at least in the UK. I imagine in America, everyone goes off and does vocational work during their uni grad time. I don't know. So that bit sounds brilliant. And I think you're right. We'll talk again to Simon about the Oxford sort of link up. So thank you. That's cool. We should talk about that. So what else pops out as obvious to you guys? What else is obvious?
Oh, what do you think?
What have I missed?
Hey, thanks very much, James. Thanks, Harry. The previous comment speaks to this a bit. We have this sort of presumed order of how things go. Intern does some work for free. They might get a job at a corporation, and they put their brilliance to the corporation ends. In terms of an innovative incubation engine type of a thing, or a way to help introduce a level of creative thinking, it may be interesting to do it the other way around, where you previously recruit investing organizations, companies, corporations, and say, hey, we're going to find brilliant kids with brilliant kid ideas, and we're going to recruit companies to support the idea.
Yeah.
And then whatever new way of thinking brilliance the kids come up with, they'll be assured they can work on that thing. That's their passion for the next 3 years after they graduate. And if you really want innovation and new thinking, then let them do it. Sort of the slogan. Flipping out his head just a little bit. So if you really believe in these kids, trust where they're going, rather than put them through the ringer and the sausage grinder and then make them reassemble themselves afterwards to come up with their brilliance once they're in some senior role.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing bit. And I know we work we do stuff with other education platforms, and when we can get to that stage where it isn't driven by a corporate who has a particular structure and view of the world, that's a very good thing to aim for, isn't it? And I've heard, I can't remember where it is, I'm sure James will know, but I know that stuff happens, doesn't it? That approach has been taken. We did it with a few years ago now, about 2016. We did it with one of the big Japanese photocopier companies, and we basically, because we were running a social incubator program, which we started up, RICO they were called, and we took it into RICO. And so we had an entrepreneurial and an intrapreneurial program where their managers were shown, and we took them through the innovation cycle and how to do that stuff. But also then they advertised, and we got a load of guys from the outside of RICO to come in and get mentored at the same time. So we ran a program for both, but it's not what you're talking about. I think what you're talking about is much better. And that's hopefully how we start to change the business models, isn't it? When we can do that. I think my comment in Cambridge is a bit of a weird one, because again, I'm sure it'd be like some of the other big cities, but it is basically an incubator. So what happens now is there's big companies like Arm and Cambridge Wireless and a few others. The graduates go through the process in their colleges, and when they pop out the other end, all they need to do is vest. They just need to get to a position where they've sold their idea, which is probably a proof of concept. And I'm sure that's a big, anchor, but that's how it tends to be till now. But yeah, we've got hands up. Like I say, Dan, just talk, mate. Don't do the hands up thing, because I don't see the little handies very easily.
All right, I'll just talk and interrupt.
That's it. That's the best thing to do.
The guys that know me on here will know that I've mentioned this book numerous times. It's a book called The End of Average by Todd Rose. I don't know if you've come across it.
I've heard of it. I haven't read it.
I would suggest you read it because it talks about how, I mean, we're talking about education and universities, and they are still based very much on how they were 150, 200 years ago in the way they teach stuff. And that doesn't develop people to their best because everybody's an individual. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. And if you try and force everybody through the same round hole, you lose a lot of people along the way. So yeah, I would say definitely read the book. I'm reading it for the third time. It's fascinating.
Thank you. I will do that. Because yeah, our gig really is to try and tool people up so they can go out and use their brilliance. Not telling them you must do that, you should do this, but it's a bit like painting for some of this stuff, isn't it? If you're going to be an artist or a painter, you go and the good ones, in my humble opinion, go and study first all the different styles and everything else, and they learn the foundations. And then once they become a master or whatever that means at a level, then they can chuck it all out the window and just be themselves, but they know why they're doing it. Yeah. So thank you for that. And James, sorry, you've got your hand up.
Oh, yeah. I really appreciate your question that, to oversimplify, like amounts to flipping the script a little bit. And it, I don't think we have alignment in this room yet, which is exciting. This is a thrilling way to use this time, because on the one hand, we can let's think about the Cambridge as example of incubator first, right? One of the concepts that's been shared by a lot of people across the Cardano ecosystem, including Charles himself years ago, is, look, you go to places where there is not an entrenched system so that you can find out what innovation is really possible. And when it works there, then you bring it back to the more ossified places. I've never been to Cambridge, but it would be on my list of the more ossified end of the spectrum in terms of how things are done, right? So while on the one hand, I do hear you saying that there are some best practices to learn from there, I wonder how much attention we also must pay, A, to the limitations on the way things are done there.
Yeah.
Power centers being what they are, has the world in the state that it currently is. Each one of us can decide if we're happy with the state of the world, right?
Yeah.
But to the extent there are limitations, we have to question, hey, is the status quo the most helpful thing that we can advise ourselves from right now, right? And that's not a yes or no answer. Dan, I see you shaking your head, but
No,
the
I'm
answer,
nodding.
it's not a binary yes or no question. It's a damn, right? Kind of, let's think in terms of a continuum sort of question, right?
Yeah.
I'm really interested. I want to see what innovation happens in places where perhaps it has not had as much opportunity to happen, so we can find out if there's anything truly new there, right?
Yeah.
So we take this to Ohm's question as well.
Really quickly, can I quickly just clarify?
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with the actual culture of Cambridge, but is it true that they're anti-innovation, really? Or are there certain areas within which they allow innovation to occur, innovative thought? But it seemed to me that like new kinds of thinking was something that Cambridge prided itself on. And I only know anecdotally, I don't know for sure, but to clarify that, because that makes a difference about our own assumptions. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah. And I can pick that one up, James, because again, so my model has always been many years ago now. I did some work when I was doing my MBA, and we were working for Barclays, which is a big global bank, and a lot of their stuff was in Africa. Obviously it was colonial. So anyway, and we were doing this thing about exotic payments, and then we're trying to work out, why is it so expensive to do banking in Africa? and why is it so limited? And of course, this is your white sort of, prosperous male view, or female as well, view of the world. And of course, the thing is, when you go to places like Africa or in the Fens now, as Jonathan will know, near me, you've got cables with copper in them running along the road or wherever, and people burn the cables, they cut them down and they burn them and they sell the copper because they're poor. So that means that traditional banking model in places like Africa is really expensive. And of course, this is what you're saying, James. When I was in telecoms, what happened was suddenly when mobile phones came along, where does micropayments and mobile banking happen? It's in Africa. It doesn't need to happen in the UK or America, because we've got networks that handle that stuff that are entrenched. And they're not very effective, but they're there. Whereas in places, in developing countries, you don't get it. So yeah, that's the flip that's in there is, so we're working with WADA and we're doing this stuff around building community hubs where we can run SBOs and we can help get the brilliant, the end game. In fact, I don't know if I've got it on here. I might have it. And if I have, I'll share it. So the end game for that one is to build a network that becomes an education. Oh, I've got it. Is it okay if I share? Are we doing all right for time? If I just share for a second.
Yeah.
Right. So can you see this one again?
Yep.
Oh, this is the other one. Right. Okay. This is the product rollout for it. I can't find the network one. I won't worry about it. But basically, we have a stack like this. This is our product rollout stack. Yeah. But we have a physical rollout stack as well, which is about going to community hubs, helping build them and their awareness by becoming outsourcers and recruiters, first of all. So they add value by having people that work with proposers and get paid for that. But then you spin that down till eventually they become an education platform that finds and trains developers that can then go into Catalyst, Cardano, or whatever. And of course, the next bit then is to deliver that with AI now, but I'll stop sharing because that's not a diagram I thought it was. Because that's where the brilliance is. So what we've started to do with our farming clients, we've got 2 or 3 big farming clients around here, is we're starting to have that conversation to hook, because they do regenerative agriculture, and they've got operations in Senegal, places like that. So again, the idea is you go to the Africa and you work out how they solve the problem of not being able to afford to use fertilizers or extreme heat and everything. And that's what you bring back to the UK, or they operate in Europe and America as well. So I love that model. The thing with the guys like Cambridge, though, is at the moment, they've got the money. At the moment, they've got the name. And the graduates go there. The best guys in the world go to certain places. So part of that for me is what can we go and do the guerrilla action where we go in there and we understand what's the best of their system in your space, this is particularly, and then how do we take that bit out so that we build the bridge between Cardano and blockchain and those types of institutions. Because you're quite right, James, aren't you? The pivot will come when those old systems start falling over, like they're doing a bit with finance at the moment. They are massively innovative. Cambridge is incredibly innovative, but it's exactly what you said. It's innovative in the system for the people who are in the system. And the system is not innovative, if that makes sense. It's not decentralized. It's very centralized. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been feeling for a long time like universities should be much more liberal with handing out tenure to young professors and then just kick their ass out when they're 45, make them leave so that you've got that constant fresh eyes on stuff and you don't get the ossification at the level that some of these 60 and 70-year-old professors who've got their prizes and their papers and their books, who are vested in keeping the thought in the same state until they're dead, right? Prevents any new approach to research or whatever development they work on.
Yeah.
because I'm all for tenure, but you know,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be your whole life, right? It's not healthy. They should get thrown out.
Yeah, and again, I don't want James's head to explode, but that's part of it. The education model, because again, Jonathan and I do this thing called Genius U, which is a different education platform model. There'll be lifelong learning, so those institutions will become less of the balance of power over the next 5-10 years. I'd imagine maybe 15. So in some ways they'll always be there, but their power will shift because of what you guys were saying. You don't have to be on a campus now. You don't have to be in that system. You don't have to be a doctor. When I was doing this 15-20 years ago, and I had mates who were Greeks usually, who were very, very clever. And what would be the case was they'd be doing a degree, but their degree would be irrelevant because they would be wiring up internet cafes at the weekend. That was then, let alone now. I mean, nowadays, why would you go to university unless you need to be a doctor or something? And particularly in your space, it just starts to become irrelevant, doesn't it? And that's the Gimbalabs model, that model you guys are using this, and we do it too, this project-based learning model that's decentralized. That will be the way it goes. You just need to build the credits in. And that's what you guys are doing. So, yeah.
We haven't figured out how to make it pay yet. But
Well,
it works.
This is the bit where we come in. It's about building the value. It's not about getting paid. It's about getting valued. And then the payment comes from the value. The problem at the moment is you're paid by a market rate, which is set by a market, which doesn't differentiate your brilliance from guys down the road and pays the least it possibly can, which is fair enough if you want to do a market for today. But what you guys do and what we do is build assets for the future. And humans are pretty bad at understanding future value or intangible value, which I find always fun with the tech dev guys, because you work hard to understand your hourly rate and your hourly value, but what you deliver compared to what you get is small.
Well, let me ask you this, Harry, because what I find in Cardano, right, is that it's a microcosm of what we see in society at large, right? It's unavoidable that it is that way, you know. And people love the shiny objects, they love the moon projects, and even though we are trying to turn economics, turn banking, turn society upside down with decentralization, there is the same lack of respect for the infrastructure and the education required for that to happen as there is in the regular society. I mean, that, you know, after 3 years, that's what it looks like to me. It's that same dynamic. It's not that I feel like it's can only be this way or that it's inevitable in this way. I feel like it's been very, very poorly articulated how we can be different. You know, it's that there's this celebration that we're different, and yet there's this lack of recognition that we are employing the same social dynamics that we grew up with. You know, there's not really that inner drive to like do something different, to orient differently. It's just that we want to build something different, but you know, the money dynamic is going to remain the same. You know, DeFi is going to rule the conversation in crypto. Really, you know, that seems like we're doing something this differently, and obviously it's not. The problem is people don't understand the simplicity of banking. Right? On the development side, people think that the banking rules, you know, DeFi rules because the money goes where the money is. And the reality is that in blockchain, DeFi is low-hanging fruit. It's just mildly more difficult than NFTs. You know, And the reality is, if we really want to change things around, we wouldn't be worried about governance right now. We'd be worried about building out the infrastructure and the education that we need to have billions of people on this blockchain.
Yeah, I do have a comment there, but I'd like, it would be helpful, certainly for me, and I think also for the enrichment of the conversation, to get opinions from you guys too. But there is a model out there, and it was done, I can't remember the guy's name now, but we tend to work in layers of context, yeah? So like you've got the earth and then you move out in layers of context. And it's a bit like the atmosphere. As you move up, things speed up. So if you take this sort of model that we'll use, I can't remember the name of it now, this guy. Anyway, the model is you start off with spirit or nature. So your base layer is nature. So that's all the things humans didn't create, but it's also the Egyptian word or etymology as well, which nature is spirit, it's human spirit. So that's the base layer. And we have that. And then on top of that, the next layer then is culture, which is us as humans and maybe sharks and monkeys and all the rest of it have this all too. It's not just saying it's us, but humans have a culture. The culture is the embedded systems that allow us to work together and do more than just work on our own. And then on top of that, you've got governance. So how do you govern the systems? And then on top of governance, then you've got the infrastructure, and that's all the systems. So that's the physical systems, the knowledge systems, the relational systems, all the system stuff. And then on top of that, you've got the commerce, and that's how you trade and everything else, which of course humans have done since day one. We've always traded. And then on top of that, you've got the arts, which is what we express. That's I find, in my humble opinion, an excellent model to work to, because they're all interrelated and they all move at different speeds. So the longest epoch, obviously, is the nature, and then culture can last thousands of years, and governance systems may last hundreds of years, and then infrastructure systems last different times. So that, for me, is part of the answer to what you were saying. But I'd go back to what James said earlier. It's understanding, if we're in the spaceship that's 2.5% of 2.5% of 2.5%, sorry, Seb, I'll finish in a sec. If we're in 2.5% of 2.5% of 2.5%, our conversations are going to be radically different from the 90-odd% of the people who live on the planet. The issue is to bring those 90-odd% into a space of awareness so that they can do all their brilliance with it. And this is what I find often happens in this space. People are quite, and I include me, quite ideological, and you want everything to happen today. And we used to do this exercise when we're coaching with people. We'd get the leaders of the business or the organization to walk across a room and say, oh, I've got here, we got there, you did this, we did that, we grew that, we got to there. And then they turn around and they find all their staff, all the people that work for them in their organization, like with Imperial, we do this with and whatever, are near the wall and they're 14 meters the other side. And that's your problem. If you don't bring people with you, you can change all the systems, but they won't adopt them. So, sorry, Seb.
Yes, thanks, Harry. We as Gimbalabs had the opportunity to work in this entrepreneurship space, in the incubation space. We worked the last year with Seed Stars, and that was really interesting because they called us to give some talks around smart contracts and around the technical things. In that time, we had the second version of the Prepuce PBL. So we teach in that, we taught some kind of instructions and we gave some little talks around that concepts, that technical concepts. And was really interesting where how the participants of the incubation of this incubation program, they got all these tools, all these technical tools, and they start to think about how to apply the tools in their own businesses. That was only a pair of talks, but that was sufficient to generate some kind of effect in the minds of the students and in the minds of entrepreneurships. SteelStars itself didn't have a specific plan to integrate both areas, the technical area and the entrepreneurship area. But that was a beginning. That was a start. So I think that in this case, in your entrepreneurship enterprise, we can take the Plutus PBL and we can make the same thing. We can deliver, put the tool, the Plutus PBL, this third version, in the hands of the students, in the hands of the entrepreneurs in Cambridge, and they can take the tools and they can start to make some things. And we have the infrastructure, we have the people, we have the talent to support the people in Cambridge, students, teachers, entrepreneurs in general. We have the capacity to make to provide good support.
I think that's brilliant. So for my questions, because I have to tell you guys, you've been very lazy. We haven't done any of the exercises so far. So I'm extremely disappointed that we haven't broken out a customer avatar and all the bits that go with it. But really the question is, okay, so we've got this little project. We'd like to build it bigger so that it adds proper value. Yeah, it doesn't just do some interesting sushi, apparently is what we should order, but some sushi evenings so that some grads who are radically overprivileged anyway just get a bit more munchies before they do their clever stuff. In there, what's going to support you guys then? What can we do with this little program that will support you, as you say, either in a Plutus space or in a Emergo space or in a or even Little Fish or a Little Fish space, or what's going to help you guys? What's going to help Gimbalabs? What can we go and do that will help you?
I'm excited to hear everybody else's answers.
No, go ahead, Jane. I'd rather hear yours.
Well, I'll jump in. I think I would love to hear about the feedback from professors having heard about Gimbalabs. I think that'd be very cool. So if you've got students coming in here, getting a new kind of learning with a new kind of technology, new approaches, breaking their thinking outside of the traditional learning model, and then feeding back to professors, and then getting questions and queries about what else going on out there that's changing stuff. Because like has been said by everyone really, we're in an innovative space, doing innovative things, and the easy focus for us is the people who are open to that, and predominantly that's why the growth in Africa, Latin America, South Asia has been pretty healthy, but actually the representation here of the Cambridge elite or the Harvard elite or whoever is far fewer, and actually there's probably a greater possibility for us to be influencing them than vice versa. So really it'd be great to hear how down the road we've impacted the other direction. But yeah, really encouraging to have any kind of student come through ultimately, whether they're coming from Oxford, Oxbridge, Cambridge, or
Harry, you can tell the Cambridge kids that our Plutus Pioneers program or our Plutus project-based learning program was too difficult for the Oxford kids to stick with last summer.
Do you know, I was going to ask you about that, but I didn't want to take the time.
This is part of what we're pushing back against as well, is what is a reasonable amount of technical literacy to expect of somebody. It's hard to make the most of new tools when those tools are intimidating, right? And so if we can say, on the one hand, certain concepts can only be simplified so much, but on the other, it's our job to make sure that there are hooks that are strong enough to make somebody want to spend the time to learn something that, at least at first, is perceived as really difficult.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I'd like some other answers to that question, actually. I have an opinion on that.
Hey, everyone. Hey, I have some questions regarding the financing of all of this. I think that's a really important point. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, a bit muffly.
Sorry, I'm eating at a Burger King right now. I have to leave the apartment. But I think it's really important to discuss the financing of this project, where it's going, what is the motivation for why people want to be here, or what they're going to do after. I can speak for myself. I'm really enjoying being here, but I want to work, and I want to work in Cardano and with blockchain. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here. And, I have intentions of giving back to the community also, but I think it's important to know, if there is work available, what kind of opportunities come after completion of PPVL, things like that. And yeah, basically how to finance all of that. I think there's a whole financial motivation that needs to be addressed. Those are some thoughts.
And is that for you with Gimbalabs and in Cardano?
It's for me more with, I'm wondering more regarding Gimbalabs, like with funding and things like that. There's nothing really clear about how that works. I think some transparency about that would be good. And also to have some kind of white paper or like a business plan. And I know business plan isn't like the best term, but at least some kind of vision, or I don't want to say vision, but something that is kind of tangible, like a tangible vision for new people here, or future participants, investors, whatever you want to call it, the community in general, so they have maybe a little bit more of a clear idea of what Gimbalabs is and what it's going to be.
I can give you a little perspective on that one, Aries, but you're asking a question for Gimbalabs. But what I can tell you, because that's what we do with Edify, with our day jobs, that's what we do. We help organizations do exactly that, build their plans and valuation models. However, what I'd say is you're in one of the best places in the world to do this. So if you can hang in there and make this work, you will be 2 or 3 levels above most of the other elite devs that I'm talking about, that James is saying are at Cambridge, because they don't know any of these models. They don't do decentralized. They don't understand. They won't be using D-work or anything like that. They won't be trying to solve the problems you're trying to solve. So I would say I can get it will be hard, because again, we haven't been paid for a long time working in Catalyst. However, the learning and value you'll get from it is world class. And I can say that as a fact, because I've worked with enough institutions over my years that work in this space. So that would be the thing. And organizations evolve, and James has a plan for that, and he'll tell you all about it. However, I would say at the moment, you are in a chaotic system that is starting to just get its attractors sorted. Yeah. And that's where you are. But you're right at the front of the 2.5%, of the 2.5%, the 2.5%. So if you can hang in there and make it work, that's where you can influence the future for a lot of other people. That's what I'd say. Yeah. I did have a comment for Cambridge, James, and this is for you, really. I totally get it. The gig in Cambridge, as I said, is to vest. So you have developers there who may be very, very good, but they're not hungry, and they're tutored on how to get a VC or an angel or a company to vest them. That's all they give a shit about. So then they will employ people who are hungry, if that makes sense. They've been trained their whole way through their academic career to be leaders or managers. And this is the issue I have with this entrepreneur thing, where everyone has to be an entrepreneur. No, 5% of people are entrepreneurs, and then you've got leaders, and then you've got managers. And leaders handle the complexity, and managers handle the complicatedness. So everyone says, oh, I must be an entrepreneur. I'm not an entrepreneur. That's not my skill set. Proper entrepreneurs, brilliant, gold dust. However, trained to run the system, to get the money, that's a different skill set. And that's what the guys in Cambridge and other places like it will be good at. Yeah, good at running. We used to have, when I was in A.T. Kearney, a consultancy, you would see the guys with 2 laptops. Yeah, because they thought that looked much better and harder. And that, I think that's your system. So when you say the Cambridge guys are not that technically adept, I totally understand. I don't think the brightest technical people would go to Cambridge. I know some of them will, but I think a lot of them wouldn't be able to afford to go there.
Oh no, and that's not the claim I was making. I was saying we'd like to figure out how to make those connections, and a joke about our experience with Oxford so far. But this is a growth area, right?
Yeah, but I understand why you wouldn't necessarily get the ones who can grasp what you're doing, which is disruptive tech.
Right. No, that's so wow. There are many more points to potentially cover. I feel almost like we're just getting started. We do have to wrap because we transition at this time directly into a meeting about the Plutus project-based learning program that we're currently rolling out, and the platform that we're building to support it. So Harry, these are things that when the time is right, we would be happy to provide these things. So you just tell us when groups are ready and how we'll work it out. But thanks for this. Any last words, Harry, from you or from anybody else?
I talk too much, so I need to say thank you very much. It's been, as always, I've learned a massive amount.
Any next most elegant steps that anyone wants to line out? All right. For anybody checking this video out, thanks for watching it. And you can join us every week for Gimbalabs Playground, 1800 UTC. See you soon. Thanks, Harry.